I'm the Climate Change Exhibitions and Outreach Officer at Stromness Museum. My role is really varied, and I've worked in partnership with both of the organisers today through the Creative Climate Assemblies. And we are looking to continue doing more of those this year. So let us know if you're interested to be involved. It's partnerships between creative and environmental organisations. And today's event has been organised by Michael Butler from Thaw, Orkney, which is a local affordable warmth and inequality reducing charity. And also Francesca Perotti, who is Orkney's Community Development Officer for the Highlands and Islands Climate Action Hub, which is a Scottish Government funded organisation which works to promote community-led climate action. And they've worked really hard to pull this all together. I just get to come and speak in front of you. So thank you very much to you both. And thank you especially for getting in touch and organising a connection with Dr. May East, who's joining us on the screen from Edinburgh. May is a British-Brazilian international urbanist who's been working in cities both in the global north and south, including mining cities, informal settlements and 20-minute neighbourhoods. She's worked as an international civil servant with UNITAR for over 20 years, with educational projects in over 55 countries, and today she's a UNITAR Fellow. And I had to Google UNITAR. It is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. May has also completed a PhD on What If Women Designed the City, which turned into the recently launched book, which I'm lucky to have a copy of that I borrowed here today, and I'm hoping May will tell us where to get one, because I would like to get my own copy, having even just skimmed it. It's so easy to read and understand, and yes, everybody should get one. And May, I've been really, as I said, impressed with your book, and being from Orkney, which is a, as we know, a rural island community, I wondered, the word city sort of made me think, is this going to be relevant to Orkney? But it very much is. And me, in my role at the museum, I work in the local environment and promoting nature and access to nature with people. And I was really kind of surprised to see that link between wildlife, nature, green space, and gender sensitive planning, which is two things that maybe I personally haven't directly put together in the past. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that more. So the event today is going to have three parts. First, May's going to tell us why gender sensitive planning is important, then how to advance the agenda, and then she's going to share the results of our research. And we're aiming to finish up at 10 to 2, and then have about 10 minutes where we can kind of think about this in an Orkney context, but there will be chances for you to ask May questions as well. So May, can you start off by telling us why women in cities?
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Speaking from Edinburgh, I appreciate very much the opportunity to present some reflections on the findings of my research, and also booked titled What If Women Design the City. Today, it can be adapted, What If Women Design Places, because it's about designing places. And as Kate mentioned, my talk will have these three movements: setting the context, why is this important, outlining the methodology, how can we do this, and also highlighting some leverage points. To the context, why is this important? So this conversation takes place at the intersection between two mega trends informing the world we live in. And mega trends are trends that kind of evolve, progress over 1, 2, 3, 4 decades. They're mega, they go slowly, but it's definitely a trend. And the two trends are the repositioning of women in society, way back in the UK with suffragettes, and this is happening slowly but advancing, and the accelerated pace of the urbanization of human population. Right now, we have 50% of humanity living in urban environments. Projection is 70%. And today, we're building an equivalent of a Paris every 5 days in the planet. So there is definitely this trend. So at this intersection between these two mega trends, women reposition society and rapid urbanization of the human population, a series of recent publications by international knowledge holders, such as World Bank, OECD, EU-backed, they have nothing to do with cities or women. That is very interesting, but a series of very recent reports reaffirm that historically, cities have been planned and built primarily by taking men's experience as reference. As a result, is the audio okay? I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So as a result, cities tend to function better for men than they do for women, children, older people, all levels of ableness and gender identities. Furthermore, what is known as gender neutrality in urban planning usually reproduces gender stereotypes that often limit women's realities to the care role. Alongside these reports, there has been a growing interest in a mosaic of gender-sensitive policies and interventions from cities such as Vienna, with over 30 years of track record in this field, Barcelona, Umeå in Sweden, Lyon, and even Glasgow, that has declared itself a year and a half ago the first feminist city in UK. These cities are bridging this historic urban planning gender gap in their unique ways in areas such as gender-sensitive budgeting, urban extensions with a female face, transformation of zones of anxiety to zones of easiness, design against crime, active travel infrastructure, amongst other topics. But before we enter in this conversation, I would like to suggest we make a collective decision and reaffirm three awareness that I believe are alive in this group. The decision is about not using an old map to explore a new territory. This means that despite the fact that cities have historically utilized an able-bodied adult male person as reference for their planning, we do not hold a zero-sum perspective where women's protagonism in urban planning means other genders losing out. Here we suggest women to work alongside men to redistribute power, balance representation, and transform planning and legal systems. The new map that we are creating is one of co-evolving mutualism, where women and cities are implicated in the construction of one another towards places that work for all. So that's our decision. In terms of the awareness, the first awareness, we can see as we sit together in this room in where you are and here in Edinburgh and the other participants in different parts of Scotland, I believe, we have thousands of scenarios on the future projected by think tanks, economists, climate scientists, futurists, urbanists like myself, big data analysts, all the scenarios, what we are going to happen if we're going to grow to 1.5 to 1.8 centigrades to 3 to 4. We can synthesize all the scenarios in two. Transition is going to happen. Either we're going to design it and we're going to be victims of it. And we are aware, we're all in the business of designing the transition. And we understand design here as a collective process of envisioning, reflecting, conceiving, imaging how to redesign our presence, our human presence on the planet, which is one of the biggest design challenges of our generation. The second awareness is related to the direction of travel. We are conscious that sustainability is not enough. How can we sustainably bring back something that we have already lost? Living systems and urban environments have been highly impacted by our lifestyles and linear economies. Here, we adopt a regenerative mindset and explore the roles of women in bringing more life, more vitality, more viability, which is vitality over time, ensuring our places, our cities, our islands, our towns can co-evolve with ecological systems over time. Here, we're working with lifelines, not with deadlines. The third and last awareness, before we enter into the discussion, says that if we cannot imagine the future we want to create, we will never going to get there. So by working regeneratively, we let go of a problem-solving mindset and start working with the notion of potential rooted in the biocultural spatial uniqueness of place. For instance, the potential of strongness is not in Edinburgh, or the Western Hales is not in York Hill. The potential is always grounded in the uniqueness of place. There's always more potential than can be realized. Potential looks forward, problem solving backwards. Therefore, in our conversation today, we focus our collective gaze on what is strong, not in what is wrong. So much for the context. Let's move to the methodology. Remember me saying that we're not going to use an old map to explore a new territory. Therefore, the methodology, how we are going to explore how places would look like if designed by women, has also to adopt new maps. In this case, to see how places would look and function if designed by women, I utilize walking interviews with 274 women from both affluent and harder to reach neighborhoods in Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Perth, complemented by the use of a GIS platform used as a tool for visualizing and analyzing spatial data. All conversations started with a kickoff question, said, what is unique about your neighborhood? From there, participants made decisions, including the route followed, the duration of the interview, the walking pace, what they wanted to show me, and also what they want to reflect upon. They were given control over the research process, and we invited and were seen and heard as experts of their neighborhoods. I never wanted to walk with women for them to make a list of things for their neighborhoods to work better for them in terms of active travel, safety, sense of place, green spaces, but that was somebody else, was a list, a wish list for the council to realize their dream. So therefore, I wanted them to be engaging to a regenerative pathway where you start from uniqueness. What is unique in your neighborhood? Potential is always grounded in the uniqueness. From the uniqueness, you move to the potential. What is the potential that is there that hasn't yet been realized, that is forward-looking? And of course, you're not naive just to say that in every place there is only potential. There's always restraints for the potential. So you invite them to look at what are the restraining forces that are here that will help to shape and shift your potential. And you reconcile the potential that is forward-looking with the restraints, reconcile and define new lines of work. And from there, you start looking at networks of responsibility. And from the networks of responsibility, what are the roles women can play in unleashing the potential place that women were looking at, they were revealing in the interviews? as you can imagine, 274 women interviews. The shortest one maybe was 20 minutes, the longest 1 hour and a half. In average, about 50 minutes, 1 hour. I had lots of data, and I organized the results in 33 leverage points understood as places in a complex system where a small shift in one thing can produce big changes in everything, according to a framework developed by the environmental scientist Donella Meadows. So I think there's lots of why and how. And of course, now we move to the juiciest part of the conversation with, for me to give you some examples of the leverage points. But before then, maybe you have some comments, some reflections, or some questions that we can start exchanging a little bit, and then we go to the leverage points.
My question to you was about when you started your interviews, how easy or difficult did women find it to tell you first off what made their place that they live in unique?
I think basically because we're not sitting in a cafe or in a room and I was taking note and we were walking, we were in movement. They were actually creating their thinking by walking the environment. So they've been walked and we're walking by the environment. It was very kind of easy in a way for them to start looking. And of course, there was this tendency for start looking at what was wrong, but we were already working what is the potential, what is unique, and moving to what is the potential. And this tendency of problem solving. Some people wake up in the morning and work from 9 to 5 just to solve problem. It's like managing the entropy of the world and a regenerative mindset. We don't have so much time now to start looking at problems that was created by a different mindset that doesn't serve us any longer. So we have to move into how we're going to bring whatever intervention we're doing in our places that can bring more life, more vitality, more viability. And you can only do that by working with what is uniqueness, because the potential is always grounded in this big concept that I created, the bio, which is natural, cultural, which is the social relations, spatial, which is the built environment. So the uniqueness is grounded in the biocultural, spatial uniqueness of place. So by walking the land was not difficult for them to start poetically raise what was unique, of their neighborhoods. Even those neighborhoods that were more difficult to find, they always found something that was, I think, is inherent to the human soul to look at the good things as well, not only the bad things.
Yes, thank you, May. That's brilliant. We've got a question here, a lady next to me.
Hi, May. I know that you said that you had participants from affluent and harder to reach areas, but how did you engage those people to do the walking interviews with you?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. This was an applied research. Means that an applied research, I knocked in the door of the 7 cities in Scotland, including Inverness, which is part of Highlands and Islands. And I asked them if they were interested in the results. That was going to be my research, if they were interested in the results or in the findings of the research. 3 of the cities were interested, so Perth, Glasgow, and Edinburgh. Therefore, when you engage the council on it, so they would then introduce my research to what we call the gatekeepers. Every community has always gatekeepers. I guess some of those that are hosting us today are also, are associations, food banks, NGOs, arts, community organizations, all neighborhoods have something. So So what the council did, he introduced me to the gatekeepers of the community. I would come and present to the gatekeepers, and they would then start capillarizing to some of the women. And then there's something called the snowball effect in the research. You start walking, and then women say, oh, I have some friends that maybe you'll be interested as well. And then I'll keep going. So it was, I wanted to walk with about 300 women. I got 274, but sometime I would notice that when I was doing the snowballing, and women were referring women, and the narrative became very similar, I would then stop that roll balling, and you find, for instance, I was doing walk interviews in a region in Glasgow, in an area, York Hill and Kelvin Grove, and it's a place that has a mosque, has a Hindu temple, has a Sikh temple, and I was getting lots of the same narrative, but I noticed there were many of these women that I've been, so I knock on the door of the mosque, of the Sikh temple and the Hindu temple, and say, here I am. So sometimes I will also, go and go beyond the gatekeepers that were introduced by the council. When I felt there was not enough representation for the area. So, of course, there are 33, and they were actually clustered in these 4 thematic areas: sense of place, green space, active travel, and safety. So I've taken one of each one to exemplify for you to just have a taste how they look like. But let's start with the sense of place. So I think one of the recurrent patterns that happen, and by the way, I would just want to say that I never wanted to have a perspective of a city, how the city would look like if there was just women from one segment, from an affluent area or a hard to reach area. I wanted every city working with women from both areas to see if there was anything in common and what was different, and then, merging to this 33 leverage points. So women believe that the depth and health of relationships between people and groups, individuals and groups in a community, in a neighborhood, are proportional to the availability of spaces for gathering where the longing to belong can be actualized. So in an equal society, public spaces should be equally accessible and enjoyed by all residents with diverse identities, cultures, physical and mental abilities, and age groups. So in this context, women were reiterating, and they were arguing for public structures or physical structures, public places for being together, not doing together, but for being together, with no expectation that you need to spend money to socialize. This was very clear. We want to have places to be together without having to pay. Being for us is as important as doing. So people are motivated to protect, improve, places with which they hold meaningful relationships. This is very clear. This supports the idea of renaming the departments of maintenance to departments of care, with responsibility shared among public sector, business, the third sector, and residents. The department of care of a city would involve all these stakeholders, business, third sector, residents, and the council, in discussions about achieving urban improvements using local resources and labor, doing more with less, reducing reliance on fossil fuel-based materials and long supply chains, while strengthening the sense of shared responsibility. In Glasgow, there were few examples where community came together to do something that the council was not doing, but then the council coming and supporting them. An incredible story around the Kelvin Grove Park. They had these railings from Victorian times that have really beautiful, and they have been over the years substituted by chicken wire. And the council didn't have time for maintaining or for installing, and the community wanted to embellish their park, and they knew about these gates. They decided to do a fundraising. They were able to find those who could recuperate. The council cut all the red tapes, and then suddenly they community together with council, with local business, they reinstall something that was historic for this neighborhood. So this Department of Maintenance changing the name from Department of Maintenance to Department of Care would have this ability to awaken the sense of a shared responsibility. And this is really important because, you know, local authorities have less and less resources. But if we join and we start caring for, there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. For women, walkable streets are vital for sustaining a sense of community and belonging. If women design the cities or places, they will be planned for proximity rather than motorized mobility. And active travel would be encouraged as a way of life. Women repeatedly share the vision of streets for people where cars are invited as guests and traffic is evaporated. They envision segregated pedestrian and cycle paths alongside well-networked, easy-to-navigate transportation systems, designed for trip chain and also encumbered travel. These are two important concepts for women traveling in cities. Trip chain is like when you go from one place to another in about 2 hours without having to pay one ticket for each part, because it's very clear that women don't do just one trip from home to work, from work to home. They stop in the school, in the grocery, in the farmers, go to meet a friend, and then back to the school. So it's important, this trip chain concept. And also encumbered travel. Encumbered means, you know, travel that you carry things, you carry bags or prams or wheelchairs. All of this with a direct impact on air quality, climate, health, and pace of life. Regarding access to green spaces, in general, women share the view that they like to spend time together in green spaces that feel natural. So one of the questions that they were asking all the time and the potential they've seen is like how to increase the proportion of land given over to wilder, less cultivated estate, emphasizing very much the potential of linking up pockets of green, gardens, allotments, parks, urban woodlands, creating nature corridors for wilderness returning, but also providing this continuous experience for residents of all ages to nurture love for living things, biophilia, lifephilia, love. So love for living things and for living things to move through urban landscapes more freely. I guess this is not so much the case for where you are, but for women who are living cities was very important for them. And they associated this awakening of biophilia with a very important part of an individual growing up. There's lots of research from the pedagogies of the last century, from Piaget, Montessori, Rudolf Steiner, that children, they they form their values, their worldview between 0 and 7 years old. That's a very important part of it. And Uma is saying that if during this time children are able to cultivate this love for nature, it's very possible that this will have an impact when they become adolescents. They'll care more for the place. And if when they become adults, they're not going to be aiming to control nature, because this enchantment for nature that came from the early age, it will have an impact for the rest of their life. So it's cultivating biophilia was something that women was a leverage point that was recurrent in the 3 cities that I conducted the walking interviews. If women designed a city, safety would be prioritized. They would improve natural surveillance through neighborhood watch groups, and they would reinstate community wardens. In fact, they would retrain police force issuing parking penalties into community wardens who belong. They say, well, if we're designing the cities, cars will be invited as guests, so there won't be so many guests, so we won't need so many police people, issuing parking penalties. So no cars, no parking penalties, so we can have wardens who belong, community wardens who walk around and will this combined with what is called design-led surveillance that can be done through architecture, effective lighting, vegetation upkeep, and also clear signage. Welcome, you are here, you entering this park, you leaving this place, would enhance the subjective feeling of safety with a direct impact in democratizing the way women and girls use and experience public space. Not so many women were convinced of the importance of CCTV. Very important was the eyes on the street, the eyes of the community, and design-led solutions, or combine together with the wardens who belong, was how women will feel safe in their environments. In the context of local plans, participants recognize a culture of tokenism and somehow disjointed consultations. There was this emerging consensus amongst women why municipalities, developers, planning departments are often positive towards women's participation in consultations. They tend to be less enthusiastic about actually including women's views and ideas in the implementation of the projects. To respond to this, women saw a great potential and suggested the development of a culture of deep listening so that local decisions reflect the aspirations of the whole community. They believe to change the conversation, you need to change who is in it. And I'm glad such conversations are taking place right now in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Perth, in Orkney. And in fact, this is a conversation, gender sensitive placemaking is emerging at national scale. So, some concluding thoughts before we move to more questions. Because I'm with my full screen here, I cannot see the time, but if somebody can tell me what's the time right now, I can use the time wisely.
You've got about 1 minute until 22, so, but I think just go for it.
Okay, so I'm on time, you're saying, right? Okay, so just closing thoughts here. So since fostering gender equality is actually a fundamental trend of the 21st century. Remember, I started talking about the mega trends, but also an essential aspect of good urbanism. This remains an open invitation to all those involved in placemaking, all women who are here and men as well, those who are experts of their neighborhoods, those who can, you know, have a pulse on the potential. Oh, this could have happened here. If this happens here, I'll feel safer. If this happens here, quality of air would be better. If it happens here, you know, older people will feel better. You know, we hold this view of the potential of the place. So this is an open invitation to all those involved in placemaking to embrace this co-evolving mutualist perspective rooted in a desire of inclusivity, an embodiment of care for our places, and also an acknowledgement of complexity. I believe that it is in the experience and practice of designing places that work for all that we have the best chance of making a just and also regenerative world. So I thank you for listening so far, and I'm open to comments and to reflections or questions.
Thank you very much, May.
And maybe I can stop sharing so I can see everybody.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. That was really inspiring. I personally found it inspiring. I think everybody else did as well. So we've got a wee bit of May's time left, just about 10 minutes or so. So if anybody's got anything they'd like to ask her, as you've got time. Has anybody in the room got anything they would like to
It's
ask?
not only questions, but maybe reflections.
Yeah.
What did you hear that makes sense or doesn't make sense? Let's open into reflections as well.
I have a question. In the past, I've been very involved with a group called Incredible Edible, which has got involved with. Can you hear me?
You need to get closer.
In the past, I've been very involved with a group called Incredible Edible, which has been guerrilla gardening edible crops in urban situations. And has really transformed very down and out communities, and the fact that they've been able to go and pick food and help to grow it and build community through shared meals and things like that. And some of the best crops have been grown in overgrown churchyards, which may or may not delight people. But I wondered whether edibles had come into the thinking at all of some of your interviewees.
A lot, you know, cultivating food, not only for the sake of cutting food miles, but also for the sake of well-being and community building. So it's one of the leverage points. And one of the leverage points that connects, for instance, the biophilia one with the food growing, which I thought was interesting as well, was about the creation of fresh air routes. Women talking about the importance of connecting, you know, allotments to parks, not having, here's a park, here's a garden, here's an allotment, here's my garden, but connecting all of those and creating these fresh air routes. There's a research that say that infants in pushchairs, they get 60% more of fumes in their system than adults, because their pushchair, their prams are at the level of the exhaust pipes. So women are talking about creating fresh air routes and connecting that with allotments as well, and connecting with parks. So we could go a long way in our daily life without going into, you know, facing cars and pollution and all of that. So it is one of the leverage points. I'm not sure if you can see here. I'm going to put near me. I created this. These are 33 leverage points. I created what I call flashcards. So I'm not sure which one is. Here we go. This is the one that you mentioned. It's a leverage point. Growing and foraging for health and well-being. Foraging was also very high on the list. So the deepening of the social links, encouraging more diversified diets. This was very important for the social houses. I work with women from social houses in Glasgow, in Perth and Edinburgh, and they were saying about the importance of a community garden and also for diversifying diets, particularly those people that work in social housing, that they also go from one inside to another inside. They spend the day in a flat, and then everything that happens either in the church, on the community center, they go from one inside to another inside. They don't have time outside because of the weather, but for many months. So the growing food and foraging also help people to go outside. So yes, it's one of the leverage points here. But
and we've got the book the chapter. Yeah, is there any other comments or thoughts to share? Don't be shy. Oh, here we go. Rachel is asking, to what level do you think the women involved recognise and correlate their contribution? Oh, I can't read the end of it. An input to the research as them asserting their place-based agency, and how much do they see the value inherent in that, the leverage you describe?
I didn't fully get, but I think question. To what level do you think the women involved recognize the contribution input as them asserting their place-based agency, and how much do they see the value inherent in that, the leverage you describe? I wonder, not sure if I have a direct question to that, but I'm going to go to a tour. First of all, I developed a concept called presency. And I actually was mapping the presency of women. These are presence with agency. Presence in the context of being present right now at the moment. So the walk interviews had lots of created spaces for serendipity. So things that maybe women were not thinking about as they were walking, as it happened to us, and they made meaning out of that. So the presence, and then the agency is the awareness of the context and ability to act. So I believe, or I observed in the conversations, the fact that we did the walking interviews and we went through a journey of regenerative thinking was not a problem to be solved, but a potential to be unleashed. And we were looking at the presence and the agency. I think the conversations created a space for an emancipatory thinking. Emancipatory in the deep sense of the word. Emancipation comes from the Latin, emanu capere, which is taking the hand, the strong hand of paternalism from the top of our thinking. Why is this important? Because I wouldn't say that men said, well, when this is particularly a reality in Europe. So when our medieval cities that were all built and developed for proximity, right? So they were bombarded, First, Second World War. So then we start rebuilding in Europe and UK, the cities. And those who were rebuilding, 90%, 94% of architects, engineers, urban planners were men in the 40s, in the 50s and the 60s. Not the men say, well, let's develop cities that don't work for women, for children, for older people, for different. It's just that they use their reference, their framework of mind, their experience to develop. So cities were developed for motorized mobility, not for proximity. And then suddenly cities like Vienna 30 years ago, they woke up to that, say, oh God, the cities work better for men than for women. What can we do? And then Umeå in Sweden, then Lyon, and then Barcelona. Now we have Glasgow rethinking how this can work better. And it's not such a feminist approach. It is much more the awareness that when women come in and start bringing their ideas, their leverage points, they bring with them everybody. So, so basically, I'm not sure if I answered your question. Was not so much of an answer, but was a commentary, Rachel, which was a very interesting question you put to me.
Yeah, I think the fact that you were inviting them to talk to you about their aspirations, hopefully they did feel like they were getting to make a contribution to your research and recognize the importance of their experiences. I think that's what I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and have you got time for one more question, May?
Yes, sure. I hope there is one of the men that can ask us. If there are any men in the room, I'm not sure. Apart from Michael.
I just wondered, May, you spoke in the context about a new map. Have you been able to use the 33 leverage points to create a new map and an image of that to show?
A new map?
Yeah.
Not yet. It's a great idea. It's a great idea, actually. I create a map with where the leverage points be landed, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That's an amazing. Right now, say more.
I just think that it would, especially for the people that were involved in the interviews and for the councils who helped you to approach the gateways, it would demonstrate the strength of that and the power of that, to see it in an image format.
Yeah, some of these potentials and leverage points have already been implemented after the research took place. I'll tell you an example. Let me see if I can find it here. You know, women cycle less than men in UK, and it's very, very clear. And there are many reasons. There's infrastructure, there's safety, there's lots of reasons. But one of the reasons that was recurrent in my walk interviews is that bicycles were designed for the anatomy of men's bodies. And some women were talking about, I'm not sure if you can see here. Let me just take this meeting chat out of here. Can you see this picture as a pity? Because here we go. So women were talking about devising a library of women-tailored bicycle saddles. This leverage point was about the health implications that inappropriate saddles and bikes that are ill-fitting have on women's body, particularly in the vulval area. So because we have wider hips and different bones and smaller bodies, we generally benefit from wider saddles. And so the leverage point was about bike shops and communities invited to develop a library of women's tailored saddles designed to respond to women's anatomy, making cycling a more comfortable experience for women. They believe that if the cycling is more comfortable, we use more bicycles. And after this conversation, such a library of saddle was created in Portobello. Now, this is the picture. I went to visit there. This is the picture of the library. And women can go there. There's about 10 different ones, and you try. I like this one, don't like that one. And then based on that, they get that saddle and they start, riding more comfortably. So there's some of the leverage points. And just to finalize, this conversation, as I mentioned, is taking place at national level. the chief planner, Dr. Fiona Simpson, has adopted, together with the ex-minister for planning, they have adopted this idea of gender-sensitive placemaking. And we had a seminar for planning officers from the 32 councils. Then we had a session at the parliament, and we have having sessions in each one of the cities, going back, inviting officials with the walker interviewees. And we had and when Orkney became interested, we put Orkney in the map as well. So when we were in the parliament 10 days ago, I mentioned about this session at Orkney, that is place making, is not only city making. And therefore we are here to see how relevant is this conversation for this community. And if it is relevant, I together with the team that brought me into this conversation now, we'll find a way for me to go there and spend a few days with you to continue this conversation.
Thank you. I think we'll take you up on the offer. I just wanted you to see who's in the room. So you've been looking at my face the whole time, but there's quite a crowd of us here. So
yeah, that's lovely. Hello, everybody. I wish I was there having sandwich with you.
And there's a lot of people online as well. So we've kind of run slightly over time, but I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you, May, for joining us and putting the time into preparing your presentation and reaching a new audience high up in the north of Scotland. And a huge thanks to